Want to be in the know on all things cannabis? You're in the right place. Regulations, growing, running the business.
I need a dollar.
Welcome to the $1 Pound Podcast. Here are your hosts, industry professionals Ryan and Joey.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the $1 Pound Show. It's been a long time since we got on this and got to talk to you guys. A lot has happened with the industry and us personally. And today I'm joined with, of course, Ryan Munevar and our good friend and business partner, Andrew Gogliucci. How you guys doing?
All right, man. How are you guys?
I'm good. Ryan, what about you?
I am amazing, but where do you want to go? I mean, you want to get right to it?
I think before we get to what's going on right now, which, by the way, for reference, today is July 1st, 2018, which is a big day for the industry. I want to go back a little bit and talk to Andrew about some of the stuff that he's experienced now that he's gone through some processes of obtaining permits and state licenses, and basically talk a little bit about last year, which was more of a local fight, and then talk about, you know, the past 6 months, which has been trying to set things up. So specifically, the city of Seaside is a process that you went through, Andrew, where you went through the process of trying to get a dispensary, and now you're going through the process of some other license types. What was it like to go from being a Prop 215 operator to doing your best to become a Prop 64 operator?
There's definitely, it was a learning experience, that's for sure. I would say that. There's a lot of things coming from like the Prop 215 market that, you wouldn't even ever think about necessarily. We would have to go up and speak in front of people whenever we went to the city hall, which I'm not a speaker at all. I'm definitely just someone, that was not a big thing for me in school. So, getting used to stuff like that. But it was a learning curve for sure. And, a little expensive at times, but it leaves you with, the knowledge for the next round or whatnot, wherever you want to apply later. I would say, even from like the build outs and stuff like that, I just can't call up my buddies that, hey, we're going to go throw up some rooms right now and go manufacture, wax or whatever we want to do. We got to get permits now. We have to have contractor license. We have to have, all kinds of madness that delays the time, which again makes it more expensive, and over the overall process. So it was a learning experience.
Try to move your mic a little to the left and then bring it up just a little bit there. That's perfect. It's definitely a process. I tell people all the time, Ryan and I do, about, clients or potential clients we're going to be talking to, that this is not cheap. This is not easy. It is possible, but there are times, where you're going to go through a process like the city of Seaside, where they have a competitive process, a merit-based application, and there's only so many permits to issue. You get points, and whoever has the highest points are going to get that permit. When you go through that process, you could easily drop $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in hopes of getting the permit, and there's a big chance that you will not get the permit.
I got to throw this down there as well. Our expectations and the timelines for what we've had to deal with on previous projects, I think our estimates have been radically changed. We actually not only went through the process in the city of Salinas, Joey and I, previous to this, we actually got the permits, and then we didn't really even get a chance to open up the way things panned out just for regular business circumstances. The timeline for these things, it seems like it's a short play, but quite often these things turn out to be long plays, and that's very hard to adjust to for a lot of people, including myself at least. So when I thought it's easy to wait like a year and a half, and then it turns into like 2-3, that's wild. City of Seaside, though, that actually went off pretty fast in comparison to some other areas.
Very fast.
What's your opinion of the
fast-paced.
city as it is right now?
I'm glad I did end up receiving some permits. So, manufacturing and distribution there. So, I'm thankful for that. It was I think it's just as everything else is right now with this whole industry. Everyone's kind of learning as we're going. So it was just one of those cases right there where, you know, they may have put out a couple of things, said a couple of things, and was like, okay, that maybe won't work or something like that, which, you know, you can't really blame anyone for it. It's just a learning curve right now. But I think overall what they're doing is pretty cool. You know, what they got going on with Broadway and,
that street
you know,
looks
all the
amazing now.
awesome. Yeah. And then all the dispensaries that they're bringing in, that is, I would be probably a little upset if I had one of them, thinking that there's only going to be, you know, 3 in Seaside plus MBAM, so, you know, 4, and then all of a sudden there's 7. So that would be a little shocking to me and probably my investors.
No, that's super difficult because you just upped your competition 100%.
Big time. But either way, you know, I like how the whole entire city embraced it. They brought it in. They were fast paced. There was a couple hurdles that, you know, they had to get over for being that quick on it. But overall, I think it's awesome. It's cool.
Is there anything you think should change about the way cannabis is regulated in the city of Seaside?
Jeez. Not necessarily. Not for me. You know,
Tax rates,
I'm sure once we get up and going fully, I'll have some things to complain about. But you know, right now it's still just everything. You know, it's not even the cities that are really that bad. You know, not that it's bad, but it just coming with the state. You know, and being compliant with the state is a huge thing to overcome right now.
Oh, definitely.
And with all the new stuff that's coming out and the regulations at least kind of stay the same in the city, so we know what we have there. It's constantly kind of changing at the state now.
And so for anyone that's listening that's not completely familiar with the regulations and how things are supposed to work or how they have been working, from January 1st, 2018 to June 30th of 2018, it was known as the transition period. And it was a period where they had regulations that were supposed to help everyone transition into this new world that we're going to be living in now. So things like the testing requirements were not as stringent and as strict. Things like the child-resistant packaging were taken care of by the dispensary being able to put things in a exit bag that was child-resistant. So there was different things in place that made it a little bit easier, or supposed to make it easier for everyone to learn from and, you know, get better with. And now, starting today, July 1st of 2018, there is this new phase of regulations in place. And for most people in the industry, they're not prepared. They're not ready. There has been a frenzy for the past couple weeks, and certainly yesterday, of retailers doing their best to get products that are going to meet these new regulations. And many, many retailers in the state of California were actually running fire sales and clearance sales and trying to get rid of any non-compliant product that they could, because if they had it on their shelves starting today, it was supposed to be destroyed. And whether it gets destroyed or not, I'll leave that up for your imagination, but they were basically trying to get rid of as much product as they could, and at the same time source as much compliant product as they could. And, you know, fire sales on weed is not very difficult. If you have sales on cannabis, they're probably going to show up. What's difficult is finding the legal compliant product, and it has to be, you know, legal as far as testing standards, but also packaging and labeling standards, and that's been a big challenge for a lot of people. And a dispensary that we work with is also in Seaside, and Ryan has been spending a lot of time there, trying to put in some work and help people out. And what do you think, Ryan, about what has the process been like as far as trying to get new product in and just try to be as compliant as possible?
It's been a shit show, honestly. There's a lot of confusing information coming from the state, and it comes last minute. The interpretations of what's compliant and what isn't is based off whether you're trying to move product or you're buying it, honestly. So the people that are buying it, we have quite a few things we're looking for in general, and it basically comes down to, do you actually have a COA, a certificate of analysis, that meets all the state requirements? Do you actually have proper packaging that meets the state requirements? And most people don't. And most people are just bottlenecked and in a rush to get in as much awesome product as possible. and they bought a lot of it very cheaply, and then they realized after the fact that it actually wasn't going to be compliant. So they panicked, and just about every dispensary in the state did a fire sale. And at that point, today is today, and now we're supposed to have nothing but compliant product on the shelves that we're picking up now. So that eliminated the field from, let's say there was 100 cultivators providing non-compliant products and maybe one that was. We're down to like 1% of the market. So you look at the shelves, they're pretty thin overall. And that has given those people that actually have a local permit and either the state annual license or in the process of getting it and they have a temporary, and then they actually have their product tested and they actually have slick packaging that meets the standards, that 1%, those are the people that are going to crush the market for the next 2-3 months while everybody else tries to get compliant. I'll give you a weird thing. Like, when you're in this game and you have a bunch of fans and friends online, you can build up your Facebook profile to like 5,000 people. But you really know who any of these people are. And you go back through, and I just recently did this in the past week, just cleaning them out. And I'm trying to drop below 2,000 friends. And I was able to eliminate 3,000 people that basically had all these cannabis profiles that built up to 2018. And as soon as 2018 turned on, they just stopped posting anything. They just died. So the first mad wave of elimination when the water got high, that just happened for like 90% of the market. Now the battle is going to really be between large-scale commercial cultivators that are compliant with good packaging and branding, and you're going to watch probably 90% of those die off in the next year as well. So this is going to be wild. This is where the cream really does rise to the top, and as far as getting awesome packaging in there with product that's compliant, that's pretty much the new name of the game. If you want to be local white market. If you want to be black market, you keep doing what you do, and you probably still crush it because you're not paying taxes.
You know what's funny about all that, though, is how crazy the price of cannabis probably changed, overnight. You go from $1,500 pounds of indoor, that you can put on your shelf to all of a sudden now $28 eighths. that at wholesale overnight that happened. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty crazy how that scaled. If people were ready for that, they probably crushed it right now.
And a good point that I read someone make on a Facebook group was, now that we have fire sold so much product and customers have probably stocked up on so much product, how will that affect sales in the next 2 or 3 weeks, because they probably bought much more than they normally buy. So when will we see them come back into the store, considering the stock they have at home? And also considering the prices going back to normal regulation prices, that could affect your sales too.
Totally. No, and we were getting, through our delivery service, we were getting, people sending messages through like the Sacramento Bee, where it's like they put it out on the paper. Like we were getting links to that. Like, oh, are you guys doing this? Like the newspapers were making it look like it was like mandatory. So I'm sure people were just going in and buying a bunch. I saw, on Instagram, all the advertisements, and it was basically wholesale pricing just to get it going. Yeah. So, yeah, the next 2 weeks could be very slow for them.
Oh, dude, it was wild.
But once again, what are you going to do? You're at, it's the state. You're at the state's will. It's what they want to do. If you want to be compliant, that's what you're supposed to do, at least then. And
for me, I'm probably Andrew too, and anyone that's been in the industry for a very long time, it was interesting to see. I feel like it was the first time in the history of California cannabis that we actually saw how much the government can affect the market. Because
Crazy.
When's the last time you can ever say that you've seen every single dispensary in the state have clearance sales or have sales at cost? Like, I've never ever seen that or heard that.
Other than 420, that's probably it.
Right, yeah.
That's it. So 420 and July 1st, 2018,
that is
remember it.
Insane. Every single dispensary was doing it. Like, every single one you'd ever go to or see or on their newsletter or their Facebook page was selling stuff at fire sales. And it's just really fascinating to see how all this is playing out and see how the government and the regulations are affecting the market at every turn. I saw a video of, I think it was called Meadowlands. It was kind of like a business conference up in Humboldt that they put on outside. And Lori Ajax was there, and she was getting interviewed. And she was saying that she had heard from a lot of people that they weren't ready, they weren't prepared for this July 1st transition, that most of their shelves were going to be empty after all of this. And she said that she did not realize that many people weren't going to be prepared. And unfortunately, in the new regulations, the readopted regulations, they didn't add any language that would allow them to have a extended transition period. And so they were going to try to hopefully figure out what we can do to help, whether that's maybe let the product go back through the supply chain and get retested. But, you know, considering it's July 1st right now, I don't think anything's going to happen, and I think we're just shit out of luck. And it's going to be interesting in the next couple months to see how much product is on the shelf, because there's a lot of confusion around all of this as well. I mean, there's a lot of vendors coming to dispensaries thinking they were July 1st compliant, but, you know, dispensaries turned them down because maybe the labeling was wrong, or they forgot to get one thing on the certificate of analysis for their testing. You know, and people were driving all over the state trying to sell product and probably getting turned down more than they wanted to. So it's a very, very crazy time in cannabis, and that's why we had to get this podcast done, at least today, because we like to record these things and maybe go back and see how this all plays out, because we're not doing anything creative here. We're just documenting what happens. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of bring up with you guys is, what will the next 6 months look like? You know, from now until January, what is it going to be like?
I mean, you know, I get going back. I get, you can kind of, I mean, I get, you know, I'm not all, you know, pro for all, you know, all this stuff where we have to get rid of all this, you know, perfectly good cannabis that's on the shelves. But I guess if you want to be compliant, like, when is the state going to be compliant? So in a way, they kind of have to set a date at some point in time and start making things happen. Just like they probably need to get Metric online. I want to see what happens with, you know, a big thing like weed maps. Are they going to get shut down and only licensed distributors and retailers can go on there? Because, I mean, still all the black market deliveries still affect a lot of this, you know, big time, where they can give cutthroat prices pretty much the whole entire time. But so, like, the state, I don't know, it does suck that all this product had to get fire saled, and there's probably not going to be sales for the next 2 weeks. But to really get this going, the compliancy, there has to be a certain time where they say, hey, we're doing this, like, you know, we're starting here, and then let's go forward from here.
I would agree with all of that. Also, I think in the next 6 months, this is where you're going to have so many people, their companies are literally dying, but they're going to go out there and they're going to push so hard with media saying that they're the next greatest, biggest shit.
They've been doing that forever.
Yeah, but this is it. Like, in the Deathstrokes of all of these companies, there's going to be so many that just go out there trying to raise as much money as possible, and suddenly you're just going to see all of them die by the time 2019 turns on. It's going to be wild.
Yeah.
They just won't be able to sustain the bullshit.
Well, yeah, and then, you know, just as things come out and progress with the state and getting more strict and everything, you know, it's going to squeeze out a lot of that black market.
And think about Weed Maps, though, for a second, though. If right now their current business model, they make all their money off of the black market, but as more people turn on and become legit, that's better for them. And considering that they just actually got, on their second wholesale distribution permit, they are the biggest
dangerous.
game in town. Like, their business model can change.
Dangerous.
They already got everybody's list.
Yeah.
They could fuck everybody else. Like, they could say, you know what? Let's
everything.
be compliant. Let's just knock off everybody who doesn't have their permit, and that's it.
Yeah, they know everyone's contact.
They're going to do all right.
Retailer to distributor. Yeah, let's get on that wagon.
The other factor in all this that we haven't quite touched on is the fact that there's only around 25 testing labs in the entire state.
Jeez.
And I think it's around a little over 3,000 cultivators, about 400 retailers. I'm not sure how many manufacturers there are, but I'm sure there's hundreds, if not thousands. So it comes a question of the bottleneck issue, something that we've talked about on the show before it even happened, of how many people rushed to these testing labs and were like, I need these lab results now. I mean, certainly before July 1st, but you know, something we've run into from the dispensary point of view is most people that are going to be July 1st compliant aren't going to be compliant until the middle of July or the end of July. And it's not just them not being prepared for their packaging and labeling. It's also waiting for the lab results.
Yeah.
They're screwed.
There's a lot of weight on their shoulders for that. So hopefully that's a lot of people going there, but hopefully they keep it all to, you know, there's not a long lag time on that.
Talk about that lag time, the prices, how batches and pounds work.
Well, it depends on where, what lab you're going to. We've looked into that. I've seen prices from 500 to 800. I've seen some cases where they're allowing you to put a deposit down, like 20 grand, and they just pull from your testing from that, and they'll give you extra 20% off.
They bump you up the list a little bit sooner, so that turnaround time of 3 to 5 to 7 days. That's
7 days. 7 days is rough.
There's these labs; they're not
That's
equipped to actually do the scale of testing that's required. If we're doing bulk testing at 1 to 50 pounds, considered a batch, the amount of weight coming in is insane.
I mean, and then just for the people that really don't understand, if you're doing, small batch craft cannabis stuff, you may be pulling 20 pounds of flavor or something like that.
Right.
I mean, $800 for 20. I mean,
even getting spread around, it hurts. With
yeah,
taxes
that's
and everything
hurtful.
else.
Then we got the tax per pound, so the price is going to go way back up.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough.
It's going to be weird. It's going to go up, but the cultivators aren't going to be making that much money, nor are the actual distributors for it.
No,
because the price going up is just taxes and the bullshit costs in between.
Yeah, the government and the landlords crushing it. Always.
True.
And the testing labs.
Yeah, and these testing labs. Yeah, man, 25 of them in the whole entire state. I don't. That seems insane to be able to keep up with the amount of stuff that they're going to be bringing.
How many labs do you think are actually going to pop off by the end of 2019, though?
That's probably the smart move right now, huh?
Yeah.
Just get in there. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing, but if
maybe there's like 100 testing labs, but they're going to conglomerate up, and there'll be like 3 major factions that hold on to the majority of them. That would make a lot of money, though, because that's
probably going to be the whole cannabis market.
Well, you think a regular bulk ag testing lab for regular agricultural products would make a run at that, and I'm sure they would, because the requirements for labs, that's about the safest, sexiest, easiest one to do.
Yeah, and cities embrace it because it's high-paying jobs.
PhDs all the way.
Exactly. They're not selling or really. I mean, they're intaking cannabis in small quantities.
Yeah, but nobody's breaking into a lab for give me all of your half-gram samples now.
No.
I'll kill you.
God,
That'd be a good movie, though.
No.
Continuing.
So yeah, I mean, labs. That's a key thing, and that's gonna definitely be when you have cultivators and things like we're going through right now with building contracts and stuff like that. And people want, they want their product on the shelves. Well, if you go through and you're a distributor and we got to take those testing, it's taking 10 days to get it tested, and maybe they want you to package it too. It's like 2 weeks before you can get it on someone's shelf, even if they have the account lined up.
Yeah.
So, and that's money. 2 weeks, that's half a month. I mean, that's tough, especially when you have acres of greenhouse that you have to pay for.
What's really weird is Joey, what happens if it doesn't pass testing? What are we really supposed to do?
So, if you're a cultivator, you're allowed to get R&D testing for your products, and you can, basically test before it goes to market. But if you're a distributor, you're the one responsible for testing the product, the official test, we shall say, before it goes to a retailer. So, if a distributor tests the product and it doesn't pass the requirements, if there's a way to remediate the product and then retest it to fix it, we're allowed to get that going and have that happen. If there isn't a way to remediate the product, then we're supposed to destroy that product, and the cultivator basically is ass out on that. They lost that product essentially. So that's why some of them will do the R&D testing to try to ensure that they are good to go before they get to a distributor.
What do you mean?
Do the R&D test.
I go in the back parking lot and I smoke 8 ounces straight out, or what do they really mean destroy?
They mean throw it away. I mean,
how do we verify that?
I think you can go to the dump, right? If you're supposed to get rid of. I think they have
some dude named
services
Chuck that pulls up in a van,
and
it's I'll destroy this for you, $80.
Yeah, you're supposed to have either someone come pick it up, or you take it to the dump, and you got to get a weight receipt for.
What was the name of that trash website we came up with the other night when we were drunk? Cannabisgarbage.com or some shit like that.
Yeah,
best $25 ever spent online at 3 a.m.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
It's going to be pretty crazy how it all plays out. I mean, especially with, we talked about, the state kind of came out with clarifications at the last minute. Literally, the California Department of Public Health released a clarifying document around June 29th that just made things a little bit more clear and was meant to help us understand the packaging and labeling requirements. But to come out with that on June 29th is insane to me, right? Like how
Why?
it was a helpful
Why even
document,
do it?
but it would have been helpful a month ago.
Yeah.
It would have been helpful like 6 months prior to this, honestly.
Yeah.
Come on.
So that was
Give us some
interesting
leeway.
thing.
Shit, Metric isn't even online technically working yet, is it?
No, not yet, and that's something that I think I don't have any like solid evidence or no way to say it's for sure, but I have a feeling that Metric will not be ready until next year, and because of that, I don't think that anyone will get an annual license until next year, because I just don't understand how it will work if you are holding a temporary license and you're a distributor, and then you're going to sell to a retailer who's on Metric and it has an annual. How will that?
Nothing can
integrate, right? So how do we do that? I don't know. That's why I think maybe they'll just let everybody ride with their temp licenses as long as they go through the process of applying for the annuals to extend their temps until next year, and then maybe next year there'll be some deadline where you have to be on Metric by this time, or you're illegal.
It'll be another July 1st.
And won't you say, like, be on your best behavior and, like, send us some .csvs of what you guys are doing right now, and we'll sync that shit up later, and then...
You really
in
think
reality,
they're going to go
maybe
back
the
there and
black
do all
market?
that?
No, of course not.
Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
The golden
like I said
age.
before, it's just a learning curve for them. They're not making it up, but basically
Bless their hearts. That stuff is so convoluted up there that they have to
Yeah.
work with to come up with regulations for these kinds of laws. My goodness.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
Well, and if we go back just a little bit to, I think it was sometime in May, where they readopted the regulations, the temporary regulations, but they made some amendments to them. One really good amendment they made that, to give them some credit, is the the designation of A and M licenses, because for the longest time we all thought that was absolutely crazy and silly, and
was a little ridiculous.
if you're an adult use licensee, it's a separate product from a medical use licensee, and you have to have separate inventories, and you can't sell the type M stuff to the type A customers.
I like the greenhouse one's the best.
So what they did was they readopted it, and they basically struck out that language and made it so a M and an A licensee can work together. The product can be sold however it gets sold, and that's a good thing. I think overall they'll probably just eliminate it altogether, because there's really not much difference now, especially that they can work together. I don't even know what's the purpose of having an M over an A.
The only other thing I'd like to see is the taxes just getting collected at the end.
Yeah, I mean that's
like Washington does, I think, or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, they'll never
Man.
happen here. It's
But,
brilliant. It's simple. It's elegant, but not
They
in
took-
California.
they-
Every fucking layer is going to
everyone
get their
needs
cut.
it, right? But I mean, talk about getting rid of a headache. You remember how we were
So much
talking
more
about
efficient.
that distribution stuff? So like, if we take on a product from a cultivator, and then we go down and drop it off at a retail spot, and they got 30 days to sell it, and then we got to pick up the money. Then there's there's so many transactions that have to go on.
Yeah, it's a county nightmare.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like you said, Ryan, it's California.
Yeah, and so for anyone that doesn't know, the way it works is a distributor collects the flowers from the cultivator, and once that product goes to market and is ready to go to market, which is determined by the test results, the distributor is responsible for collecting the excise taxes from the cultivator, I guess cultivation tax technically, which is $148 per pound and $44 per pound of trim. And there's also a fresh frozen tax. I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but it's another tax, of course.
Something ridiculous.
So once the distributor collects that from the cultivator, they are responsible for getting that paid to the CDTFA, the California Department of Tax and something or other. And then at the same time, when a distributor sells to a retailer, they are responsible for collecting the excise tax from the retailer. So the distributor plays a really big role. I actually wrote a blog and made a short video about this the other day, because there's a lot of people that are Googling, how to sell to dispensaries in California. And I said in the video that it's not as easy as it used to be, where you can just show up with a duffel bag, a couple turkey bags, and be like, yeah, bro, my buddy grows super bomb, bro. Now you got a lot of responsibility if you're going to be a distributor. It's definitely not as simple as it used to be.
Transportation, distribute, all of it, man. I mean, just to drive it, too, you need paperwork.
Yeah. I mean, there's with everything I just described, there's a ton of liability that goes with it. Collecting the taxes, making sure they're paid on time, making sure that the right amount is paid, and then also, making sure you don't fuck up someone's product, making sure that you don't leave it in a hot car, making sure that you have climate control.
Yeah.
The distribution license is going to be a tough one to do without some sort of issues coming up, and that's why it's really, really important for anyone that's thinking about becoming a distributor. You need to make sure you have a good attorney that you can work with, because you need solid distribution agreements in place. You need to make sure all the expectations are laid out. As many of the what-ifs that could happen are handled and agreed to before they happen as much as possible. There's always going to be things that we can't predict, but from a business standpoint, from a liability standpoint, you have to be solid in those agreements and contracts.
Should we talk about actually what some of those details and terms are that we generally run across?
Yeah, I mean, one, like I said, making sure that it's very clear that you are responsible for giving me the money for those taxes. I'm responsible for getting them to the CDTFA. So you don't want to collect product from a cultivator and then have to go back to them and be like, okay, these 100 pounds passed the test. Now I need, this much money from you for the taxes. And him be like, oh, no, you're crazy. I already paid you for that. Or I'm not paying that, or any of those situations. So going back to what Drew talked about, your invoicing, your accounting, all of that needs to be very clear and concise, and something we probably will do ourselves is collect the taxes even before it gets tested and before it goes to the market, because we don't want to have to deal with those issues. If you're going to bring me 100 pounds, you're going to give me the tax money for it as well, and I'm going to hold on to it until it gets to the next stage. If it doesn't make it to the market, then I can either give you a credit for that tax money or I can get back to you. It's just something that you have to do.
How about things like transportational costs?
That one's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's just the newest thing that's a tough one. Back in the day, you drive someone, send someone to Oregon or whatever, send them back down. You're like, I'll give you $50 a pound. You drive back down. Nowadays, it's not like that. Well,
now we have, for example, who's charging actually storage cost, and as well as, where we really make our money with wholesale distribution, honestly, is packaging. We really should be called packagers at this point. As far as those deals and how they're set up, there's lots of different ways. How does it work, for example, when it comes down to white labeling? These are all the big questions of how we start to reorganize ourselves as a cannabis industry for businesses to work together.
Well, and the cultivators are allowed to package their own products if they want to. They can package it and have it ready to go when it gets to you. You probably will still have to do the labeling as a distributor. However, that kind of goes back to the R&D test. If the cultivator wants to test their product before it gets to you and label it, I believe as long as it's within the 10% give or take range, you can let it pass on to the retailer. So in some cases, you may have to relabel it if your test results are different from their test results by too much. But I think that's how it's going to work most of the time. But to your point, there will be cultivators that don't want to deal with that maybe they don't even care about their brand. They're just growing good weed, and they just want to white label everything. They're just like, yeah, just buy it. You handle it from here. So, and as far as transportation is going to be pretty crazy too, because the regulations they have for that, they're insane. You have to have GPS on all your vehicles, and you can't deviate from the route that you're going unless you have to get gas or, it's something basic like that. You have to have a motor carrier's permit. Yeah. You won't be able to stop and get tacos, man. You might get our license jeopardized, but...
Well, then, out of all the top 3 things that regulation is really trying to do, you have the quality of the product diversion concerns, and taxation. Out of those 3 things, what do you think is the number one thing the government really cares about? Is it diversion? Is it testing?
Diversion.
Is it taxes?
Diversion and public safety. At least that's what they'll say. I'm sure taxes are up there as a high priority too.
Taxes are probably their number one.
Because if we can just connect it at the end, like Drew said,
they don't want
like the way Washington does, the taxes being collected there is so much more efficient than all this mix-matching stuff that gets up to that point. Because what ends up happening is all of the actual steps along the chain will end up diverting that cost to the next step, which eventually goes back all the way to the customer.
Right to the front. It's like what Monterey County did. They're like, hey, we're just going to charge you per square foot. I don't care if you grow a gram or 50 pounds a square foot. This is what we're going to base our,
How good you do in comparison to how much you pay in
Right.
taxes is based on how good you are. So, yeah, definitely. That is right.
That's actually, you made me think about that. I don't want to deviate from the topic too much, but I mean, since we're kind of talking about taxes, Monterey County recently did something very big that we were proud to be a part of and happy to see. They drastically reduced their cultivation tax. It was $15 per square foot, and they dropped it all the way down to $5 per square foot. There was 3 board of supervisors on board that voted for it, 2 that did not vote for, or said no, I guess, that didn't want it to go through. And that's a huge, huge win, not just for Monterey County, but I think for the state, because hopefully other jurisdictions will see that and say, okay, why did Monterey County do this? They must have a reason for doing this. And Monterey County, believe it or not, has kind of been leading the way in certain instances of regulating this, because they were one of the first counties to ever do it. They were,
believe it or not, motherfucker, we were part of that. Yeah, definitely, we believe it.
I think that's why they also came up with the $15 to $25 tax. They're like, hey, we're not basing it off anything. We're going to be the first. If you want to come and do it, you're going to pay it. And as other counties came online, and they're like, well, we want some of that action. We're going to lower ours. Well, Monterey County's like, all right, well, now we got to play ball. But at first, when there's no competition, well, you charge what you want. It's a monopoly almost,
And I think they were, Monterey County, they didn't quite get as much tax money as they thought they would get, not as much as they were projected to get. And I'm sure that played a role in it. And I mean, we've been lobbying for it for a long time. Certainly not just Ryan and I, but many different stakeholders in this have been lobbying and trying to educate them on why it needs to be lower. And quite simply, it's just not economically feasible for them to try to operate in this environment and pay those taxes and pay the state taxes and retrofit these greenhouses and pay all their employees by the books and pay for the insurance, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So they listened, and I'm really happy that happened, and I hope that other places will lower their taxes as well.
What place do you think has the best tax rate out of all the counties or cities in California?
I think I'm not sure what Humboldt ended up with, but I know at one point they had the 1, 2, 3 model, $3 for indoor, 2 for greenhouse, and 1 for outdoor per square foot. I think that's probably the most fair rate. I mean, honestly, anytime we're talking about taxes, whether it's cannabis or business taxes or anything, we're never happy with them. They're always too high, so we're never going to be satisfied. But if we had to have a starting point, I think that's probably the fairest starting point that I've seen. And there certainly could be other ones out there that are better than that. But so taxes are a big deal, but we're glad to see Monterey County lower their taxes. That's a huge win for our area and hopefully for the entire state coming up. Going back to the state stuff, beginning July 1st, edible cannabis goods may not exceed 10 milligrams of THC per serving and may not exceed 100 milligrams of THC per package. So that is a big blow to the edibles industry, a big blow to any of the high-dose edible companies that are out there, such as Corova, that kind of made their name on the 1,000 milligram.
The black bar.
Happened to come across
a couple of those the other day.
I mean, obviously they're gonna adapt and they're gonna do what they got to do, but it just doesn't make sense to me why we have to drop it that low. I just don't understand what that's gonna do.
You talk about the market or whatever for edibles, with all the testing now in the white market, the edibles for 100 milligrams is big money. I don't know. I haven't been into a bunch of retail shops lately, but I know it's got to be close to $35 for like 100 milligrams or $40.
Yeah.
And on the flop side, on all these Prop 215 spots that are still open, the 1,000 milligrams are a little bit tougher to get a hold of. So now all of a sudden the price of those have gone through the roof. So if you could still get them at normal, whatever it is, your $30 1,000 milligram brownie, but like people are willing to pay extra money for them because of this. It's a basic supply and demand. People are scared. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get a hold of these anymore.
Well,
so
people are still going to keep producing them?
I mean, when weed was illegal, did we not grow it?
Definitely.
But what I'm getting at, it's created a craze on the 215 market to where there's people that, instead of buying one of them, they're buying like 10, and they're it's pretty funny. Of course, people will always still make it.
Do you see much of the edible market actually picking up or staying what it is right now, or dropping as far as people buying?
Just big high dose edibles like in the Prop 215 market, and in the white market, it's too expensive for who wants to pay $40 for 100 milligrams. If someone needs a 500 milligram dose, they got to eat 5 chocolate bars.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. You're gonna get diabetes before you do anything.
And that also adds to a concern some people have that are more green friendly or environmentalists, because look at all the packaging that we're having to do now. Look at the more packaging, the more
100%.
plastic, the more this, the more that.
In the eighths, everything.
Yeah, the
Just
eighths.
look,
yeah.
I mean, main thing, pre-rolls. Used to be able to throw them in a tube. Now they have to be in a cardboard box just because how much language has to be on them. I mean, that's, I mean,
not enough to wrap around
and then
the
the
tube,
expense, and then the expense to produce all that stuff is obviously going to get, pushed forward to the ultimate consumer, because now that pre-roll price is going to go up $1.50 because it has to have some crazy absurd packaging so it can fit all the language on it. So see what happens.
I'm going to pull up this document real quick. So, just making sure my computer doesn't get overloaded here.
The power of editing.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is a document from the BCC. It is the required testing chart. And basically what it outlines is the testing requirements between January and July, then test requirements between July and December, and then eventually what it's going to be next year. And so between January and July, product was supposed to be tested for cannabinoids, moisture content, Category 2 residual solvents, Category 1 residual pesticides, and microbial impurity testing, and then homogeneity testing for edible products. Now, everything I listed is kind of give or take. Your inhaled cannabis doesn't need to be tested for residual solvents. Your manufactured cannabis and edibles do need to be tested for residual solvents because, that's cannabis oils that we're talking about. And again, your inhalable cannabis and your inhalable cannabis products, basically your vape pens, don't need to be tested for the homogeneity, if I'm saying that right, testing. And so what's happening now is they are adding another layer of testing. So now we're going to do Category 1 and 2 residual solvent testing, Category 1 and 2 residual pesticide testing, and then the third one that's being added is foreign material testing. So when we look at this, like we talked about, your testing prices are probably going to go up because you're testing for more things.
Definitely.
We also have the concern and the issue that some of these labs don't even have the equipment or the ability to test for every single pesticide that they're looking for, which is a big issue. And so it's a matter of, okay, if I can't physically get my tests that I need from a licensed testing lab in your state, then it's impossible for me to be completely compliant. So what do? I'm not out of compliance because I'm doing something wrong. It's just...
Yeah, that's just a tough one. And which is probably going to cut down the labs to, if there's 25, 18 of them can do it now.
Right.
Whatever. It's like almost, I was joking with one of my friends, what happened to the edible market now with this new testing is going to do the same thing to the cartridge market.
Yeah.
No one's going to be passing any tests, I'm sure. I mean, you know how crazy this distillate game is right now?
Right.
People are $4 a gram, just spitting out whatever they can because people can put it in a pretty package in a cartridge and sell it for, $30-$40 a gram or whatever.
And I would, I agree with you. And kind of to your point, I would say that the vape carts are the dirty little secret, not so secret if you're in the industry, but if you're outside of the industry, they're probably one of the dirtiest products you can get right now.
Yeah, they're the new wax,
Yeah, we don't know what's in them. We don't know, everyone says that it's all natural terpenes and that they only cut it with terpenes and nothing else. But
fraction distillation from straight crude, adding in Amazon terps, throwing it into a Chinese sea cell, and letting you guys. That's what a majority of those guys are doing right now, and they've been able to do. But this is, with this new testing, this next one is definitely going to
It's all going to get.
It's going to harshen it up a little bit on them,
I
especially
think when they get to the point that they can afford and they have the manpower to audit and go to dispensaries and pull product off shelves, and test it. That's when they're going to be fucked.
That's the real time. But what's the timeline you guys think on that? I mean,
I don't think till next year, maybe.
Yeah, they got to get some.
This year.
They got to get some manpower. I mean, obviously, and after a year, they got to get metric up and going probably, so they're actually pulling in all their tax revenue that they should.
Yeah,
everything that way they can pay people. But once that happens, then companies will fall.
Big game changer. Yeah. I mean, we saw that in Colorado too. When they first started getting their act together as far as regulations, there was a lot of recalls. Some big names over there were being recalled.
Oh yeah.
I think that'll happen here. I mean, with California, it's a little different than these other states because we've had a market and we've been a cannabis, headquarters for so long. We could very well see some of these biggest brands that we've ever known get recalls or get in trouble.
Yeah. Biggest brands, literally.
Biggest brands, yeah. And that's going to be a pretty wild thing to see. So when we go back to this testing stuff, I mean, the list is pretty long when you're looking at what type of solvents, for example, are they testing for. So the Category 1 solvents, from my understanding, these are the things that they can't have any trace of in their products. So if you test and you have benzene, you are pretty much fucked right away. And then you go to Category 2, and these are the ones that have like set levels. So you can't be above these levels. So butane, for example, is set at 5,000 parts per million. So if you have 5,001 parts per million of butane, your stuff does not pass. And it's a good thing because I think for a while, I feel like did they have 500 or 1,000 or something? I remember
it did go up. It did definitely go up. They were like, it was real small before.
Right.
And what did they change the butane to?
Butane's at 5,000.
That one is? Oh.
Yeah. So 5,000 parts per million. So they have acetone, they have butane, ethanol, heptane, hexane, isopropyl alcohol. I mean, there's a lot of them on here. Some of them I probably won't even pronounce right, which is why I'm skipping over them.
How do they even determine these levels?
Fucking methanol.
I think most likely they probably went by what other states were doing. There's probably FDA guidelines or some type of federal guidelines on like what is safe to inhale with these type of products or type of chemicals, I should say. Because, I mean, like butane, for example, that's in a lot of different things. A lot of these chemicals are in a lot of different things
at like
besides
5,000,
cannabis.
so if you're pulling on a Bic lighter at the end of a cigarette, you're getting a lot more than that.
More than that.
You look at hexane, it's only at 70 parts per million. That's wild.
Yeah, and that's for the inhalable products, and it's 290 for, like your edibles, I guess, because obviously if you eat something, it's going to affect your body differently than if you inhale something. So, I mean, and look at that second one. Was it acetone trial? Anyone want to take a crack at that one?
Know, but
was that nail polish remover?
That one is
you
only
basically better not smoke that shit
though. that is at 6 parts per million, which that is absolutely insane. You basically can't have any of that in there. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to assume it's dangerous. So we go down and we look at the pesticides, which has been a big issue in the industry for a long time. And I mean, the biggest one, the most popular one is the myclobutanol, the Eagle 20 stuff. What they have here, again, is the Category 1s, which my understanding is they can't have any of that in them at all. So you see that one right there, paclobutrazol, which is your PGRs, your bud hardeners, your gravities and your phosphor loads and all that fun stuff that turns you into an amazing grower overnight.
You guys are done.
And then you come down here, and I mean, there's a long list of residual pesticides that you can't have in these products anymore. So that's going to be a whole nother can of worms for the industry. There's a lot of growers out there that depend on these products to get their crop gone. If they can't use this, then they're screwed.
Yeah. Here comes the insurance claims.
Right. So it's really funny to see how this is going to play out. I mean, there it is. There's myclobutanol.
We were worried about everything being flooded everywhere. Everyone was, and it's still flooded. But with all this new regulations and everything, it's going to thin it out a little bit I think for 3 to 4 months. Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to thin it out, and that it might be a big enough blow to some companies that they can't make it through that, that 3 to 4 months. They can't get that testing, all that packaging done because they have so much money in the other
Do you
stuff.
think people can actually grow cannabis this good without all of the regular pesticides they've been using up to this point?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's possible. I just think it's a matter of
cost difference,
matter of habit, and a matter of just what they're used to. And I mean, to be honest with you, like it's one thing to grow like in your garage. It's another thing to try to grow on these massive operations.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's parts of the operation you probably can't even get to that plant because it's just so far away.
Have an outbreak with 100 lights.
Yeah, right.
Not your 4 in your garage. Yeah,
it's not easy.
And what's funny? I mean, like look at all the pesticides that they spray on the fields that are right next to the greenhouses right here.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I mean, we're the agricultural capital of the world right here. And
that goes back to what we said about, the difference in safety of products you eat versus products you're going to smoke, right?
Of course, you ain't smoking lettuce or cabbage, but...
You haven't tried it, dude?
No, it's bomb.
Yeah.
That's
you haven't had lettuce stabs?
Lettuce stab. That
and a lot of these greenhouses... a lot of these greenhouses are doing positive pressure greenhouses to try to, thwart that as much as possible, but who knows if it's going to work. I guess we're going to find out in the next couple months.
Real soon.
So one thing I wanted to go over, which was somewhat new, about 2 weeks ago, was in the news. The Chalice Festival founder sues the Bureau of Cannabis Control after a permit denial. The Chalice Festival was denied a permit to fully operate in San Bernardino. Now they're fighting back. This is an article on High Times, and it talks about basically how they were denied a permit to hold their licensed event. And Chalice basically said they worked really hard to be one of the first events that could, first legal events, I should say, that could get going here in California. And for anyone that doesn't know, you're probably not in the industry if you don't know about the Chalice Festival.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest ones that happens. It's a huge event. It definitely competes with High Times as far as events goes. Some people would argue it's even better than those events.
I would say nowadays it is.
Right.
I'm one of them.
So, according to a quote from this article, the BCC denied my application due to the city of Victorville's disapproval of cannabis activity in their jurisdiction. Drakup, I'm probably mispronouncing that, I apologize, wrote in an Instagram post on Tuesday, "We went and tried to get on the agenda at the Victorville City Council meeting. They refused to put us on the agenda. It is not their jurisdiction." So I read a little bit about this a few weeks ago, and what I understand is they're arguing that, so to get an event passed right now, this may change in the future, but you have to get it passed. You have to get approval from the county fairgrounds or let's see if I can find it here.
It's like local approval first.
Ag tech function.
Yeah, there's some. Let's see if we can find it. There's some rule where basically it's based on, like Ryan said, there's an ag entity that has to approve it or a fairgrounds that has to approve it. And so what Chalice is arguing is that they got that approval, but they didn't get the approval of the city that it was in or the county unincorporated city that it was in. And so they're saying that we should be allowed to do this, and Victorville doesn't have jurisdiction over this area that we're doing it in.
After that, first council said,
right,
it's a go.
Right. And and after they went through the process to get their temporary license. So let's see what more of these quotes say. The BCC's interpretation of the law, the Victorville City Council's refusal to issue an approval letter as demanded by the BCC, and the ultimate denial of Chalice's permit on the grounds of local jurisdiction approval all violate clear and established case law about the state sovereignty of the county fairgrounds and the 28th DAA, which quite simply are not subject to any local municipal codes at either the city or county level. They go on to say the jurisdiction which holds legal authority over the SBC fairgrounds is the 28th DAA, who gave us written approval, and the BCC rejected it. The laws that govern the implementation of Prop 64 are confusing, contradictory, and violate state sovereignty, making it virtually impossible to host a licensed cannabis event at the majority of properties explicitly authorized to host them. So this is going to be an interesting story to follow because we're basically 6 months into this new regulatory system, and someone's already sued the BCC.
How many people have sued the BCC? Is this the first?
This is probably the first that I know of. I mean, certainly the first one that's public.
Credible
It's
as
the
fuck,
biggest
though.
one. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
got
definitely
Chalice.
the biggest one. So they filed a petition with the Superior Court of California in Sacramento County, and we'll definitely stay up to date on what happens with this and see how it goes.
How's the Emerald Cup going? Are they still functional? They can operate up there, right?
I have a feeling they're probably pretty friendly with the city and county they work with by now. So
It's Santa Rosa compared to Victorville. I mean,
This thing
Right.
brings so much money to this county, though. Like, what the hell?
and
of course, every year.
Like, how many, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars in business does this bring in, like, a 2-3 day time span? Like, you think any pizza or bakery or
People make
7-Eleven
bad
is pissy
decisions
about
every
it?
day, Ryan. Every
You're
day.
right. You are right. Keep going, Joey.
No, I mean, that's all I really had for it. I just wanted to mention it because it's a pretty big story. It's going to be interesting to follow. Interesting to see who wins the lawsuit.
Yeah.
And I think there's plenty more to come, not just for events, but, for probably a lot of the testing stuff we're talking about. There's going to be a lot of situations where people are going to probably need to win the lawsuit to keep their business going.
This is going to set a precedence right here.
Wait a minute.
This one.
So there's 58 counties, and they're guaranteed to have 58 fairgrounds somewhere within those counties. So we got to get the approval of the county fairgrounds and the county or city that the fairgrounds are residing in now? Until
Well,
this gets
apparently.
resolved?
Yeah, I mean, apparently that's what the BCC is saying, that the local approval, the written local approval they got from the DAA is not what
Has
they
there ever
needed.
been a shooting at a cannabis event ever? There's more
not that
shootings
I know of.
at like kindergartens and grade schools than there are at anything we do. Do we ever have any like mad
I
events?
don't think that has anything to do with it, though. I think it's just...
There's no problems with us operating though.
No, I'm saying like the BCC is saying you got approval from the wrong person. Like I don't think they're thinking anything about shootings.
So wait, where in the BCC does it say we actually have to get approval? Who do we specifically have to really get the approval from?
My understanding is the fairgrounds, but I know for a fact there's more language to it than I have at the top of my head, and it's some sort of agricultural association.
Farm Bureau. Would that work?
I don't
Would that
think
classify?
no, it's not Farm Bureau. It's something else. I'm sorry, I don't know right now. But on that topic, there is a assembly bill in the works. I believe it still has to be heard by the Senate. Or actually, I think it was heard on the Senate this past 25th. I'll have to double check and see where it's at. But it's Assembly Bill 2020, and it's about exactly what we're talking about: temporary event permits. And this bill would authorize the BCC to issue a temporary license to provide on-site sales and consumption of cannabis at a temporary event located at a fairground. Here's that acronym: District Agricultural Association event, or at another venue expressly approved by a local jurisdiction. Specifically, this bill adds other venues expressly approved by a local jurisdiction to sites eligible to host a temporary cannabis event. So, to your question, Ryan, right now it's a fairground and or a district agricultural association that can that the events have to take place at, and Chalice is saying they got approval by the District Agricultural Association, but they didn't get approval from the local jurisdiction, and they're saying that, in this case it's not Victorville's jurisdiction, so they should be good to go. So what this bill will do will basically allow you to have these events pretty much anywhere you can get local approval. So if you want to do it in any city, regardless of fairgrounds, you should be able to do it if this bill passes.
Are we talking like a nightclub? Like, could we do this at the Roxy in Los Angeles? If that's a local approval, or who is local approval?
No, yeah, it would have to be the city that it's in or the county that it's in. But I mean, I'm not sure how many rules and regulations apply, but I'm pretty sure that as long as you get the local approval, you're going to be good to go. So this passed the Assembly 60-16 and will now be heard in the Senate Business and Professions Committee on June 25th. So that already happened. We'll have to go back and look and see what happened exactly with it. But basically, it's a crazy time in cannabis, and we can kind of wrap this up. That's just some of the main topics we wanted to cover.
So, real quick, wasn't there another Senate bill that was going across more towards our distribution stuff?
Yeah.
Is there an update on that?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So it was Senate Bill 311, and right now it has to do with distribution to distribution sales, and it has to do with testing. Right now, if distributor 1 gets the product and gets it lab tested and then sells it to distributor 2, that second distributor has to get it tested again in order for it to qualify to go to market to the retailer. And that doesn't work for a lot of people, and that's something I'm sure the testing labs love right now. But
Double.
it doesn't work because if you are a distributor and you have multiple hubs in the state, every time you move it to your new hub, you have to get it tested once again. So what this bill will do will basically allow it so that the first distributor that gets the product can get it tested, and those testing labs will qualify as it moves down the chain. So if it goes to a second distributor or a third distributor, the first initial testing lab will still be good enough. And that's, I think it's past, it's got through like step 1 or 2. It still has a ways
to go.
But I'm pretty confident it will pass. I don't see why not. So
they need to pass it sooner than later, especially with the new testing standards.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
going to be real expensive.
How are we on time?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to pretty much wrap up.
Cool.
Unless you guys had anything else to add. Went over a good amount of stuff, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you want to save that?
Shout out No Code Distribution.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We went over a lot of crazy stuff. If you have any questions, you can always hit us up at cannabispermits.com. We recently got that domain name, so it's much easier to remember who we are. And this is another episode of the $1 Pound. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
And
thank you, guys.
Hey, real quick, Andrew, what do you think about, being the third wheel on this whole madness every week?
You guys
wanna
are wild.
do it?
You guys are wild.
You got to do this with us, man. We got to interrogate some people. I love your style.
I know. I'm here. I've been
Are
here.
you down?
Yeah, we're here.
All right,
we're
the Three
passing
Amigos it is. Keep
Lefties,
going.
pre-rolls, and everything.
no, that's it. All right, guys.
All right,
Smoke 'em
guys.
if you got them.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the $1 Pound Podcast with your hosts, Ryan and Joey, online at $1pound.com. We'll catch you next time.